Hi, welcome back. Today you're with me out on the farm where I grow some of my trees, and today I'm going to be digging out a Pyracantha. If you find the following content helpful, then you can thank me by clicking the thanks button just below the video. The Pyracantha is not a species that you are able to dig from the ground or repot very early in spring when it's still cold. You need to wait until it's a little bit warmer, and the tree is usually growing quite well by that time, and then it's then safe to dig the tree out. I've grown this Pyracantha in the ground for I don't know how many years now, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. I planted in the ground, and it has been pruned back quite harshly every now and again so that I don't have too heavy branches, but also obviously to give it room to expand so that the base of the trunk can thicken up, which it has done. So it doesn't look like much at the moment, but when I dig it out you'll see that it is actually fairly substantial. Now, the first thing I need to do is just to clear up the area around it and just to remove the weeds. This is one of the challenges with growing in areas like this, areas other than your back garden basically, because it's so difficult unless you're constantly, if it's not too far from where you live, then you can of course get there frequently to weed and to fertilize and do all the other things that we're able to do and take for granted really being able to do at home. But out on a farm, you also have to think about what fertilizers you're going to use, because there's all sorts of rodents and whatever other wild animals, at least where I live, that would generally like what you're going to give them, certainly in the way of organic fertilizers. Anyway, but not to discuss that in detail now. And this is another big problem over here, is these brambles. It's a kind of a wild berry bush. But it's really a menace and it's impossible to eradicate. So what I actually want to do is to dig a fairly wide trench around the tree, because I want to save as much of the roots as possible. I have a design idea for this tree, which I will share with you later. The ground, this clay soil, is extremely difficult to dig in. Also has a tremendous amount of stones. So this is going to take a bit of effort and a little bit of time. So I've now dug a trench fairly deep around the tree. Normally, if I was collecting one of my field-grown trees, I wouldn't dig so deep. I would, if it was going into a shallow bonsai pot. Obviously, it's not necessary to collect so many roots if you're just going to cut them off anyway. But in this particular case, I plan on using the roots, as much of them as I can, and therefore I wanted to dig a lot deeper. It was pretty tough going with all the stones getting in the way, pretty hard or dry clay soil, but I've nonetheless got it to a point where I believe I can now remove the tree. So I'm just going to lever it from one side, and hopefully it's going to come out quite easily. So the root ball finally came out, and as you can see, there's a fair amount of soil still clinging to the root ball. That's fine. I'm now going to take this down to my car, and then I'm just going to put a wet towel on it and get ready to leave. If you know that you're going to be digging out trees, it's a good idea, especially if it's a hot day and if it's far to drive from your dig site to your house or your workshop, or wherever you plan on processing the tree further. It's a good idea to carry a container of water, and I like to use old towels, but you can use anything really. You can use newspaper and then wrap it in plastic bags or whatever you want, but I find old towels work really well. What you're wanting to do is to wet the towels, soak them, and then wrap the root ball of the tree in the wet towel, and this serves just to retain some moisture in that area until you can get it into some new media, moist and watered, of course. From here I'm going to drive home, and the towel is just going to keep moisture in the roots, or in the root ball rather, until I get there. It's only a half an hour drive, it's not far. It's probably unnecessary, but I just wanted to show it to you just in case, perhaps if you've got longer distances to drive, it'll be more important or relevant to you. I now have the tree at home, and I'm going to wash it off with some water at high pressure. Normally I would use a pressure washer, but that's not working right now, so I'm just going to use a normal garden hose and set the sprayer to a single jet of water. A couple of days ago, I showed you how I dug this Pyracantha from the field and then rinsed off the field soil with high pressure water. What I didn't show you was the fact that I then placed the tree into a bucket with water, into which I had also dissolved some disprin, as it's called in South Africa where I am, but it is commonly known as aspirin internationally. But it contains salicylic acid, and salicylic acid is derived from willow trees, and I'm sure that many of you would have read in earlier bonsai books about how willow branches were cut from trees and allowed to soak in water, and then yamadori was then soaked in that liquid. What the difference is, whether it will be the difference between your tree dying or surviving, I doubt that the difference will be that severe. If it gives you any increase in success, or the tree grows just a little bit better than it would have without it, then I think it's worth it. The problem is, of course, that one would never know if the tree would have behaved differently, because you don't get to do it the second time. The purpose of the soaking, with the majority or much of the roots of these collected trees being removed, they will have difficulty in absorbing water. So by soaking them for a good number of days, you actually help the tree to store up water that hopefully will get it through that initial period while it forms new roots. So with the tree removed from the water, we can now inspect the roots, and as you can see, there is the remnants of the roots that were grown or that had developed when the tree was still in a container. As you can see, it's coiled around, and then you've got these newer roots which most likely formed when I planted the tree into the ground, into the field. So what I actually plan to do with this tree is to grow it in a kind of an exposed root style, where the roots are coiling and sort of intertwining with one another. And to that end, what I'm going to be doing is making a wooden box, a deep wooden box in which to plant the tree, which will encourage the tree to form long roots, because I'm going to use a very coarse aggregate, a very coarse growing medium. And this will cause the roots to snake down to the bottom to keep, in search of moisture. These longer roots that I've got here, they're very straight. It cannot form part of the future design of the tree, and they are far too stiff to do anything with, so I will not be able to bend them. If they were more flexible, perhaps a different species, then I could look at wiring them and to bend them and plait them and do some just contorted sort of movements with them. So using a root cutter, I'm just going to cut off these chunkier roots. In order to fit my tree into a container, I needed to construct something that was custom made, so to speak, for the tree. You could use a cascade pot if you have one suitable, but I didn't, and wood is a great, I love doing a bit of woodworking myself, so this was a fun little project. As the tree becomes more established and shows that it's growing well, I'll start exposing the roots by removing a panel. I mentioned earlier on that I'm going to be using a very coarse growing medium, and so it makes sense to use a very open bottom of the container. So I've just used strips of wood with large gaps in between, and at the base there is a large sheet of drainage mesh. So these ribs, so to speak, are there just to support the drainage mesh. I'm going to first put some growing medium at the bottom, and this is our professional mix, which is essentially peat and a special kind of long fibered peat with crushed leca. And this is where we want to direct, or the roots will be encouraged to grow down there, because obviously they can get water or moisture in that area. So I'm going to put that, I'm kind of covering the majority of the base of the pot with that. So let's say a quarter or a fifth of the way up is this medium. Now on top of that, I'm going to be putting the medium size pumice, and these large particles, or rather accurately say medium sized particles, are going to force the roots, because of the amount of, well, that is not going to hold a tremendous amount of moisture. It's going to force the roots down to the bottom layer. Just going to give it a good watering now. Make sure that the water comes out of the bottom of the container. And so we need to give it a good and thorough soaking of water. Especially this first time, because it just helps to settle the soil in as well. To finish off the planting, I'm just going to put some sphagnum moss around the base. So this is just to keep the moisture in at the moment, because of course that is now already exposed was under the ground, and so I don't want that to dry out too quickly. So I'm just going to put some sphagnum moss in to protect it for the first, say, month, and then I can remove the sphagnum moss again. And that brings me to the end of today's workshop. If you found that content helpful and you'd like to thank me for it, please do so now by clicking the thanks button just below the video. I will of course share the progress of this planting in the years to come, and so you will see where it started, and if you start something similar to this now, then obviously we can walk the same journey together. Thank you very much for watching. If you haven't done so yet, please do like and subscribe to my channel. Also hit the notification bell, and then you'll be notified when I upload a new video. I usually upload every Friday afternoon. So until next time, take care and goodbye.